Greetings and salutations, my friends. So today I want to talk to you about Warhammer. Don't worry, this is not going to be a hour-long lore video into Warhammer or spending time showing you all my averagely painted miniatures and stuff like that. I just want to talk to you today about an obsession I have had for almost 40 years at this point. Even if you're not into Warhammer, I think you'll find this interesting. It's about my journey of the hobby and the couple of the people. Used to be friends with Henry Cavill. We'll get to that later. But it's just like I wanted to. Well, basically, I'm getting old, right? So here's the deal. In 10 years' time, I might not remember any of this stuff. So at least I've got this video to look back on. Now, most of it's happy. Some of it's really sad. And other bits are just laugh at me. So let's get into it. Let me take you back. What I'll do is I'll make sure to add lots of pictures and stuff. So even if you're not into the hobby and everything, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. So let me take you back to the year of our Lord 1987. Me, a 10-year-old whippersnapper, socially awkward, gamer from birth. My dad was obsessed with technology and stuff, and we had the original Atari games machine. That was my, main hobbies back then. And then I met a guy at junior. It was the last year of junior school before we go to big school. And his name, if you're watching this, please get in touch. His name was Alan Thomas. Now, I haven't seen him for 30 odd years at this point. It was just a school friendship. His name was Alan Thomas. We became fast friends. And one day, he invited me back to his place. Not in that way. Just to hang out, play video games or whatever. So I went round his house to play. And then he showed me something. No, still not that. Then he showed me something. He showed me some Games Workshop Warhammer models. I can't remember the exact model of the time, but it was 87, so it would have been pretty basic stuff from like the Space Marine range or whatever it was at the time. And from that moment, I was hooked immediately. If Warhammer is a drug, and it kind of is, and it's about as expensive as one, he was the drug dealer that gives your first try for free, get you hooked stuff. He showed me this world, miniatures and tabletop gaming, and I was obsessed. Now, to give you a little bit, in case you're not into the whole Warhammer thing. By the way, this is a picture of a Games Workshop from the 1990s. This is what it used to look like. Games Workshop is a tabletop game set in the sci-fi universe where everything's bad. It's all gone horribly wrong. Humans are hanging on a bit, and there's lots of alien races, and basically everybody's at war because it's a tabletop war game. The idea of the game is you fight. So as you can see on this table behind me, I think that's some fantasy, but you basically, a big table, you set out your armies, you pick your army, so each model in your army has a certain amount of points, and they've all got their own rules, and then you battle for supremacy, whatever rule set or mission you're playing. There is also Warhammer Fantasy, which is like the medieval Lord of the Ringsy, magic elves, orcs, that sort of thing, for the fantasy version. But I think his original miniatures were Warhammer 40,000, and immediately I was obsessed. Now, back in the day, I was very lucky. I did some chores at home, and I used to get £2 a week pocket money. So, now I've got an addiction, now I need to find my dealer, right? So, where do I find it? So, I lived in Christchurch in the south of England, and through a lot of asking Alan and his dad, where can I get me fix? We found a comic book shop in Boscombe, which is right near Bournemouth's football stadium. Bos Vegas, as we like to call it. It was a hellhole. And it was a comic book shop. But in the little corner of this comic book shop, there was a little Games Workshop area. I think at this point there was Games Workshop their own shops that existed, like this one, but the nearest one was maybe, if we were lucky, Southampton, which 11-year-old I'm not really gonna cycle up to. But they had a little section, so that's where it became. And then in Warhammer 40,000, there's lots of factions. You've got the humans, and then you've got the sort of superhumans, the space marines, and then you've got lots of alien races. And there was one in particular that caught my eye. They were the Tyranids. Now, I was like, oh, these are cool. I'm going to collect this army. This is going to be my army. So I'm going to start saving my pocket money, and every few weeks I'd go and buy one of these little blister packs there on the wall. Each had like 2 or 3 miniatures. Everybody complains about Games Workshop being really expensive, and it is. But comparatively, it always was, right? So when I was, so that became my hobby. That became my entire life. Was this, okay? This is what I want. This is what I want to do. Gradually building my collection, learning how to paint, learning how to build. Obviously, all the metal models back in the day were lead pewter mix, and it became obsessive. And then I think I was about 14 or 15 when Games Workshop decided to open a Games Workshop store in Bournemouth, which on the bus is about 45 minutes, which is obviously doable, right? It's doable. So there became my nightly thing, and then on Thursday nights they used to open later because you could actually walk in, do your shopping, but then also play the games. Thursday nights they stay open late, and it was like game night. Absolute for a nerdy 11 or 14-year-old at this point. Perfect, right? Girls, go away. I have to fight him off. Not interested. I've got that's the thing. I've got Warhammer to collect. So then I obviously my Tyranid army. So back in the day, there was also a board game sold separately. You get to get in WH Smith and places called Space Hulk, and it was these big hulking wrecks of spaceships, and these Space Marines would go in, clear out, find some useful stuff, get out. But in these Space Hulks, there were gene stealers, which are part of the Tyranid universe, and there were different Tyranids. And I wanted Tyranids, and I discovered the best way to actually collect an army of Tyranids was to buy the, basically, DLC. There was the main game of Space Hulk, and then there was an offshoot games. There was a couple of expansions that had a bunch of different Tyranids in, and that was the best, and they were plastic, and that was the best way to buy them. So, problem was, and I know this to this day, it costs £12. And I worked out for my army, I needed about 7 of these. So when I was 15, I got myself a job working in a factory making bathroom cabinets, basic sort of carpentry stuff. Only a Saturday morning, and for that, I used to get paid £12.50. 50p for the bus, getting to Boscombe, or just a bit before Games Workshop appeared. Immediately, Saturday, work, £12.50, bus 50p, Space Hulk box set, £12, bosh, Tyranids. Did that consecutively for about 8 weeks, bosh, Tyranid army. Yeah? I was, as I said, absolutely obsessed. To the point where if I'd saved up a bit of money, once the Games Workshop had opened in Boscombe, the bus used to cost like £1.50 or something like that. Get there and back to go to Bournemouth. And it was like a 45, 50-minute journey. So I used to go in on a Saturday with my little bit of pocket money or something I'd saved, and I'd work out what I can buy with my money. At this point, I'd got into a game called Epic Space Marine, which was basically the same game, but reduced or expanded, so that all the miniatures are tiny. Tiny, tiny little fellas. It felt to me like more of a battle where you didn't just have 20 guys fighting a battle. This was hundreds of guys, little tiny tanks. The scale was, I just fell in love with. But the problem was always you wanted to buy more because, addicted. And there have been so many times where I decided that I'd rather walk home, like an hour and a half, 2-hour walk, and be able to spend that extra £1 on Games Workshop stuff. I know, it sounds like it, and it was a proper addiction. And I sort of built up a little sort of friend group. And then I decided to collect my first ever Space Marine army. Space Marines is like the gateway drug to 40k. They're the big shoulder pads dudes, super soldiers, gene seed, all that sort of stuff. And I decided, but there were sort of chapters of Space Marines, like different sort of sections of the army. One was like Blood Angels. They were all red, cool. Ultramarines, the Toilet Boys, they were all blue. Salamanders, they were all green. They had very colour schemes. But me being the sort of cool contrarian, I decided that my first ever Space Marine army would be called the Eagle Warriors. They existed in the lore. They didn't have any special models or anything. Basically, blue down one side, white on the other, because I hate myself apparently, and I decided to paint them that way. It was the first actual army I ever completed painting. Now, painting to me was not a necessary evil. I enjoy it while I was doing it, but I always had a hard time like committing to a paint scheme and committing. Like I never really completed my Tyranids. I painted some, but then I got excited about Eldar, which are space elves, and then Orcs, and so I've had lots of bits of army. But I was registered on the Thursday evening to play a proper game. It might have been like a little mini tournament, and I had picked my army, and it was the Space Marines. So I completed the whole Space Marines army, and I spent a lot of time on it, and it was a thing of beauty. Now, here's part of the sad part of. So everybody has their weird stuff, let's call it. Their weird mental stuff. Mine was, and still is, I don't know how to describe it. Basically, I was so scared of actually playing the game of Warhammer 40,000 because I was so, and it obviously very stupid, but this is not how the mind works, right? It's not logical. Very stupid because people would have just helped me and I knew the rules inside out, but I was so scared of getting things wrong, making myself look stupid, and just absolute panic. It always used to worry me, and it still does. I have to force myself through it. So this sort of goes away in a little bit in the future, but as we get into this video, but in the entirety of my 38 years, and there's been breaks, but 38 years of collecting Warhammer, I, in person, on a tabletop, have played the proper game, whether that's Warhammer Fantasy or Warhammer 40k, maybe 3 times. And yeah, that's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed by that. But it's just how I was, and that didn't mean I didn't get anything from the hobby. I loved everything around it. I loved collecting, looking at other people's, watching people play, helping out, doing stuff. Like, it wasn't like a negative, other than the fact that I was like, I just couldn't get past that sort of hobby thing. And like at home, I would, when I was really heavy into playing Epic Space Marine, I can fondly remember taping down a 6 foot by 4 foot square on my carpet, washing out a load of terrain, setting up armies, and playing against myself, just playing with myself. Nothing's changed. Playing with myself, listening to, this might be actually more embarrassing than the other, Richard Marx, leave it, it was a phase, and had a whale of a time. I tried at one point to rope my nephew Chris, who was 7 years younger than me, into playing Warhammer. He played along because I kind of made him, but he was never really interested. And I remember one particular time going to Bournemouth with him on the bus and then telling him we had to walk home because I'd spent all the money. But yeah, so it's a weird thing. It gets better, don't worry. But I've never actually played in person that many games. And to be fair, I probably would have played a few, but the last sort of 12 years or whatever it is, I've lived in the arse end of Northern Ireland, and it's not like, and I don't drive, but there's not like, and now I live in the absolute middle of nowhere. It's not as if I got like players on my doorstep and stuff. Like if I had friends, if I had real life friends that came, I would play it now. I would definitely play it now, which kind of sucks a bit. But, so anyway, so the amount of time that I used to spend in these nights and just enjoying it, so and I actually did play a game with my Space Marines, and then I collected a Space Wolves army, and it just went on. So, but when I was 18, so my mum and dad split up when I was 11, and my dad moved to Jersey in the Channel Islands. When I was 18, I didn't know really what to do with my life and stuff like that, and he said, "Why don't you come and live in Jersey? Maybe you'll find something you really want to do." And I took it. I decided to go for it. I moved to Jersey in the Channel Islands, and sadly, because it's Jersey in the Channel Islands and it's a tax haven, I became an accountant. Turns out not what I wanted to do. Did it for 8 years. Good money. Hated it. But then and I think I had a little break from Warhammer around that time. But then I got back into it. They have a monthly magazine called White Dwarf that's still going, that I've collected for years and years and years. So even when I wasn't really into the hobby, I'd still have that magazine and I'd still keep my ear to the ground. And then when I was 18, 19, I was like, oh, kind of want to play but collect a bit more, most of my stuff, to be fair, at this point, a few bits I'd given away, but most of it I took with me to Jersey, but it was kind of in storage in my dad's house. And then I got back into it. But again, Jersey, small island, not a Games Workshop. There was one place, again, that sold Games Workshop, and it was called The Little Shop. It was a tiny shop, and it wasn't even like a toy shop. It was a gift shop on the sort of parade on the seafront, where postcards and gifty stuff, boxes of fudge, mugs, all that sort of thing. But in the corner, for some reason, they had a little tiny Games Workshop section. And it was this lovely old lady that used to run it. And so I found this place. But the good thing was she'd order me stuff. So I could go in. She'd give me a discount. Because I used to literally go in at lunchtimes, sometimes when I was working at Ernst & Young, the accountants. 10-minute walk, sit, have lunch with her, just chat, hang out, buy some Games Workshop, head back. And she'd order me stuff that I needed. It was great. And then it was like, okay, well, where do people play? Then I discovered a cafe called Saruman's. I know, so nerdy. It's great. Which was a little cafe that had a nice little seating outside, and you get a few old ladies turn up and just have a coffee and stuff. But most of it was set out to, and it sold some comic books, and it had some meals that you could put in the microwave, but most of it was set out to play games, whether that be board games or Warhammer or whatever it is you fancy playing. So there I found my new group of players since moving away from Games Workshop. And in that group of players, and I'm not guaranteeing this, but it must have happened. I can't remember like any of the actual names of any of the people, or people, I know them vaguely and I might recognise a couple, but like I couldn't tell you who they were. But Henry Cavill would have been in this group. He must have been, because it was 20 of us, and it was the entirety of people that liked Warhammer in Jersey, and he was obsessive. He posted a picture on his Instagram of him outside the little shop saying this is where it all began. So I probably knew him, maybe I hung out with him. But that was like, it was such a fun time. Again, maybe I played a couple of games back in the day, but it was more about the hobby, the collecting, the talking about it, the building of army lists and the lore and all of it that encompassed. And again, still regret that I didn't play more, but, brain. So then, I can't remember exactly when I moved from Jersey back to England, and I think that was probably I think I was in Jersey for like 10 years, maybe, and then I came back to Bournemouth. That was probably sort of my biggest sort of break. Now, here's the saddest bit of all, my friends. After being in Jersey for about 9 years, I'll give you the brutal truth here. After being in Jersey for about 9 years, most of which I lived with my dad and my stepmother, and we did a lot of fostering. We fostered over that course of time. I think fostered about 50, 60 children in that time. And, for most of it was pretty good. And they treated me like their kid and everything. And then they had a big old family house. And I decided that I would sort of move out, but like a halfway house. There was like a flat at the end of the house that was like cornered off, had its own entrance. So I started renting that. Now I was earning money and everything. And then basically, how do we word this? Basically, my stepmother decided that I wasn't part of the family anymore. And this is, nothing in particular happened that I can remember. We seemed to get on fine. But basically, one day she decided that I needed to move out, spread my wings, even though technically I was in an apartment anyway. I think it mainly came down to the fact that we were a good little family unit until they had their own children. And obviously I'm just a half-blood. And now I'd basically been replaced. It's my best guess. I couldn't tell you. And you know what? Fair enough. She can be a weirdo. That's fine. Whatever. And then one night, me and my dad had words and a falling out because basically I told him because in my eyes, occasionally we'd have a smoke together and chat and stuff, and he'd open up and basically tell me that he wasn't really in love with this woman and she wasn't really in love with him, but it was more of a marriage of convenience because she had a big house and some money. He liked building Land Rovers. this is all from his mail. And I said, look, you know, fair enough, you can make what choices you want in life, but maybe pick up for your son. And because he'd painted himself into this position and he knew he'd lose his life if he didn't, that wasn't enough, apparently. So we had a minor scuffle. It was a minor scuffle. It was kind of like a little wrestle, like an angry wrestle, but I couldn't punch dad. I'm not going to punish my dad, no matter what. That's weird. So it was like an angry wrestle in my bedroom of my apartment, and then I just stopped and sat on the end of the bed, and then he walked by and punched me in the side of the head. And at that point, I thought, you know what? I think I'm done with this. So I quick sharpish moved out. The reason I'm telling you this is not some sort of pity story. I lost the entirety of my Warhammer. Everything was in storage in my dad's loft. And all my fishing stuff, thousands of pounds worth of fishing stuff. But because of the break and how horrible it was and how I felt, I didn't want anything to do with him. I didn't want to have to go crawling back and say, well, actually, I just wanted nothing to do with either of them. So it was all gone. Now, bearing in mind, it's hard to, like, obviously remember exactly. But at the time, I reckon in the 12 years, 15 years of hobbying, that it was easily, stuff I'd bought was over 10,000, maybe 15,000, maybe even 20,000 pounds worth of stuff, right? Because like I said, it's expensive. Looking back now, all this stuff would have been absolutely collectible at this point. If I'd had that stuff, let's say if it's worth 15 grand, if I put that on eBay now, I'd probably get about 70 grand, 80 grand. Don't want to think about it? Don't think about it. We move on. So I moved away, moved back to Bournemouth, got on with my life, and had no Warhammer, I think. And I wasn't really, I was having a mini break at that point anyway. So it was probably my longest break of Warhammer. It just got on with my life, discovered girls and stuff and boobs, and then, you know, continued. But it would always nag in, just like an alcoholic. You know, when you ask an alcoholic and they've given up drinking, they will always call themselves an alcoholic. I don't mean to make light of this situation, but like, it's always there. It's always there. Possibility of a drink. And that's exactly what it was with Warhammer. Occasionally I'd spot a white dwarf in Sainsbury's, up and have a flick through and get that, oh, hello. I could just start a little orc army. Always. Occasionally I'd buy a miniature or something just because I liked the look of it. Occasionally I buy white dwarfs if I ever just, like I said, saw them in Sainsbury's and stuff, just to keep in with the hobby and watching it developed. And then I would say about 10 years ago, so this would have been a sort of, you know, late 30s, I got back into the hobby a bit more. And since then I've been well into the hobby. And the good part of this is that I discovered that some of my Discord members that I'd made, or friends that I'd made through having my YouTube channel, they were also into the hobby. Not very many, and I wish there was more. If you want to join the Discord and you're into Warhammer, please join the hobby. I need more Warhammer friends. And there was a few of them. And then we discovered this thing called Tabletop Simulator. Obviously, we're all dotted around the world, Europe. But Tabletop Simulator is on Steam. It's basically like a setup for board games. So you buy Tabletop Simulator. It's years old at this point. It's really cheap. And it gives you like a table and mechanics to roll dice and all that sort of stuff. And then you import stuff. So you could import a Monopoly board and play Monopoly online with your friends. Import Scrabble. You can do all this stuff. But people have imported the entirety of Age of Sigmar, which is basically Warhammer Fantasy, and Warhammer 40,000, all of the rules. They've scanned all of the miniatures, and each one has its rules, so you can fully play Warhammer with Tabletop Simulator. And in this group, I don't know how many games I've played with these guys, maybe about 20, which is more than the entirety of my actual collecting history. And it's so good. Obviously, it's never going to be as good as, like, playing a game. It's never going to be as good online as it is in real life, but it's still so much fun. And I want that the next edition of Warhammer 40,000 comes out in a few months, and I'd love to play more of that with those guys and everything. And any of you that wanna join in, I'd love to. It's because I think they're such close friends. My anxiety of getting stuff wrong is much lessened. And also, I know the rules inside. Like I know I've read all the books from back to front. So, but getting back into the hobby, and now I'm an adult. I'm a bit less. I'm a guy that likes, let's say, a drink, but just do it on the weekends. So I'm not like, I don't need it every day. So I'm quite good. I sort of check the news and watch videos and stuff, but like I only purchase the odd miniatures, especially because I'm so terrible at getting around to painting. My paint jobs are okay, but deciding on a paint color scheme, getting into it is so much harder for me. But once I'm in it, painting it, it's fine. I've even got the missus to pick an Age of Sigmar army, and we're going to one day paint our armies together and play real life Age of Sigmar, which I'm very much looking forward to. I have a couple of cabinets behind me, with miniatures in, and a box of, pile of shame, as they call it in the Warhammer world, which is stuff that you've got that you haven't painted. Got lots of that. But I really have a good relationship with the hobby now, and it's something very important to me. And like I said, it's almost been 40 years at this point. I love watching battle reports on YouTube. I love the lore behind it. If you don't know, basically Warhammer has its own lore behind it in all the books, but also has a thing called Black Library, which is their publishing arm. In that, there's, I don't know how many at this point, 400, 350 books that they've written that encompasses all the history and the lore and everything like this. Henry Cavill's working on a big TV show. There's already been one on Amazon. It's my little nerdy hobby that I've had for so many years that nobody had heard of has now become almost tipping point mainstream. We've got the Total War Warhammer games. There's so many good games out there now. We're going to get the Warhammer 40,000 game. It's taken on I own shares in the company. It's taken on a life of its own. I have gone to bed for the last 10 years or so. I have every single night when I go to bed, I listen to Warhammer lore. That is how I sleep. If I had a memory, I'd be a repository of incredible Warhammer lore knowledge that I could just ooge out. But, I can only remember half the things. But it's just been a massive, for a socially anxious guy that struggles with those things, it has been a vital part of my life. Not just like for enjoyment value, but it gave me a social circle. It gave me friends. It pushed me a little bit. Maybe not enough to play it, but it pushed me to spending time with other people and stuff, and not just huddled behind a computer. And it will always be vitally important to me. And a lot of people give shit to Games Workshop, because obviously the prices are so high, and obviously they are collectors' models and stuff. But I will never give them that much shit because of how big a part of my life it's been. And obviously, I don't expect all of you watching to care a damn about Warhammer, but I truly hope that you all have that thing or find that hobby that allows you to push yourself a bit, because you're so into the hobby that, okay, well, I'm just going to do it because the hobby's so cool. Whether that's sort of socially or putting yourself out there and everything. But it's an obsession that I just don't see going away. I'm an addict. I'm all in. I'm better now. I don't spend ungodly amounts of money. I don't spend much money at all. I think the last Warhammer I got, for the first time since first collecting that Space Marines army in about 1990, I have bought, or I asked my missus to buy me for Christmas, Space Marine. And I have decided to do a new I was going to paint them the same as like a homage, Eagle Warriors, blue and white. But then I decided to go for a different chapter that's way worse to paint, because I just like the paint job. So at some point I'll get around to that. But yeah, it's just a massive part of my life. I even I've got a son now, and he's he's got autism, and he's shown very little interest in Warhammer. But I bought him one of those Joy Toy big orc dudes, and then painted it for him, and it's one of his toys in his bedroom now. So I'm gradually getting there. So it's work in progress. Gradually getting there. But now if you're interested at all, I now have a small Warhammer 40,000 orc army and a what are they called? Seraphon army from Age of Sigmar. I have a Skaven army from Age of Sigmar. I have I really want Idoneth Deepkin, but I also have told you, memory. Hang on. That's it. Cruel boys who are like orcs, sneaky orcs from Age of Sigmar. And I've got a really healthy relationship now. I don't have a giant pile of thousands of pounds worth of stuff. I buy 1 or 2 things a year. And if I get really back into it, I have to paint it. This is the rule that all people do that do Games Workshop. They will try to set a limit. It's like, I can only buy another thing after I've painted the thing that I just bought. We all break that rule, but that's the rule we all try to live by. So I don't buy too much until such time as I get back into painting. I'm really not buying too much. So yeah, there is. I just wanted to talk about it because like I said, it's an important part of my life. Along with my wife and kid and the animal rescue, that is, well, this one's been the most constant and will be forever, I'm assuming. I've had to battle not making a YouTube channel about Warhammer. I was like, how many videos and stuff would I have to do before Games Workshop gave me a creator license so they could send me free stuff? That's essentially what I was thinking. But because I don't paint enough, and because I don't play the game in real life, I've got nobody to play against, it wouldn't be the best it wouldn't be the best YouTube channel. But let me know if you have an experience with Games Workshop, or you're into Warhammer 2. Let me know what you collect. Get the conversation going. I'm genuinely would love to hear about your stuff and your armies and everything. If you have any brain weirdness that you want to talk about, or if you'd like to concoct a plan to go to Jersey with me and steal my miniatures back, and my fishing stuff, that would be great as well. So yeah, I just thought it's time I made a Warhammer video and share my passion with you all. Wearing a Warhammer hat. I only just realised that. And a fishing hat. Wow, I've got 2 sides of me. Fishing Warhammer. Right, wasn't meant, but you know what? Oh well. Right, thank you very much for. Just tell me about it. Tell me about your hobby. Even if it's not Warhammer, tell me about the thing you're interested in. Everybody loves talking about their hobby. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear it. Right, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.